I've tended to shy away from doing on-camera videos for basically the entire history of the channel, and the primary reason for that is, or there's really two reasons. One, doing heavily scripted content for the overviews and stuff of that sort in this on-camera format is a little bit difficult because reading from a script is not really something I'm skilled at, so it doesn't come across particularly well, and therefore when I do on-camera stuff, I prefer it to be unscripted like this is. And the second reason is just from personal anxiety. It sometimes gets in the way of doing on-camera content, but I don't want to entirely swear off this kind of format, especially if you guys like it. So please give me feedback, and that's not really what this is about. I just wanted to get that out of the way first. So my primary point with this video is I want to go through where TDC is in terms of content, monetary status, and things of that sort, and just give a little update about the channel. And I also want to talk a little bit about myself because I realized I've never really introduced myself, even though I've been doing this for a year or two or more. And so I should probably start there. I have had an interest in drugs probably since 11 or 12 years old. And initially it was sort of a childish interest, but over time it's become really focused on history and science and the pharmacology and toxicology of drugs. And that also kind of goes along with my core harm reduction focus with this channel. So my personal opinion, and this isn't necessarily coming from a strong personal interest in using drugs, I do use substances on occasion, but it's not really where my interest comes from. I really do believe that all drugs effectively can be used in a safe way, especially acutely, and therefore we need to provide good education about how to use them in a safe way. And that applies to everything from cannabis to heroin to LSD. I really do have that position, and I strongly believe that the data in the literature supports me on this point. So that's the core point of TDC. Personally, I have had that interest for a long time. I went to university, or enrolled in university in 2015 for something entirely different, and I decided to stop with that path. It wasn't really for me, so I left pretty fast after enrolling and have since mainly been focused on TDC since 2015, 2016, and it seems to be going well so far. I mean, this channel has grown faster and greater than I ever expected it would, and that's really encouraging to see because it means drug education is actually something you care about, all of you and many other people, and it means it's something I can actually do in a way that is useful. So all of that is really great to see, and moving forward, I would very much like for drug education to be my primary focus, encompassing everything, like I said, from history to science to harm reduction, because that really is how my interest is. I care about what Schultes did in South America as much as I care about the current opioid situation in Iowa. I mean, I really care about drugs in that way, and I find all of it immensely fascinating and really something I would like to fully dedicate my life to. So that brings me to TDC and where things are going. As you probably know, I started a podcast fairly recently, and I'm still booking guests, and they cover a wide range of professions, everybody from harm reduction people like myself or drug educators, and stretching to pharmacologists and doctors and psychiatrists and people in drug policy. So it really is again, a very wide reaching kind of podcast, and hopefully you guys like that. I'm also trying to do a lot more content on the channel, so drug overviews. I also want to do some history content, and I'll be doing some more harm reduction stuff and maybe some general science and pharmacology topics to kind of explain. I mean, some of you may not necessarily understand when I'm using terms like agonist or antagonist and just core things of that sort. So explaining, say, the core pharmacology of psychedelics or stimulants may be useful and help all of you understand how these drugs actually function when they're in the body. So there's a lot I want to do, and also I'll be doing some paper overviews, so looking at the scientific literature and explaining it in a way that hopefully allows it to be more accessible and easy to understand, and kind of informs you about interesting topics. One of my larger long-term goals is to actually speak at high schools and universities and in the case of high schools, to try and actually improve the curricula that exists around drugs. If any of you have gone through, as I have, sort of high school drug education, especially in the US, you probably know it's kind of a joke and it doesn't have much of a positive impact or even necessarily a negative impact. It's just kind of pointless, and it's a waste of resources and time because it's not focused on necessarily education or harm reduction. It's sort of outlining the worst thing that doing a drug could do to you, and therefore, hey, don't use it, but it doesn't actually stop use, and we have good evidence for that, and it just leaves people not knowing how to use in a safe way. So there's a lot to improve in that way, in terms of what kids are being taught, so hopefully I can do something in that regard. And TDC on the website and the channel is all being used to facilitate that kind of long-term vision and goal that I have. And I also want to highlight the fact that I'm only one of many people who are working in this area and who care about harm reduction and drug education and drug policy reform. And so people like those behind Arrowhead, which has been doing this for an incredibly long period of time, and the team at Psychonaut Wiki, and even Drug Policy Alliance and SSDP, all of those are really great projects, and I think TDC has something unique to offer in those areas, and therefore I hope that it can grow and continue to be supported and provide something of use and utility in that area of drug education. But I'm only one of many people, and I think this is a larger collaborative and collective effort that I hope to be a part of. In order for TDC to really work in the long term, I really do want to emphasize the importance of donations. So I have never accepted any sponsors. I have never used any kind of advertisement on the channel. So the only source of funding really is donations. And I primarily have Patreon as my core source of funding, which is, it's great what exists right now. It's not enough to actually support TDC in the long term, but hopefully it will get there with all of your support. But I also have PayPal and Bitcoin for single donations. So for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar, Patreon is a way to support TDC on a monthly basis. So you can pledge $2 or $5 or $10, however much you want, every month to provide a stable, reliable source of funding for TDC so that the project can really move forward and grow, and I know that it actually is a stable thing to be working on. If that doesn't happen, or even if it doesn't happen for a long period of time, TDC is not going to go anywhere. I do plan on being fully dedicated to this topic and this project, but in order for it to truly be sustainable moving forward, and for me to bring it into new areas, support really is necessary. And I greatly prefer the donation model. There's just something about ads and sponsors in terms of, one, they might not be reliable, they might disappear over time, and two, they could have an impact on your content because you're trying to actually emphasize views or entertainment, or you're changing what you're saying in order to appease a sponsor or just to comply with monetization guidelines and things of that sort. So donations are just a much better way to get support, in my opinion. And I would rather take a smaller amount of money for the time being and grow it in this slow, organic way than to try and boost the revenue through advertisements or something of that kind. So that's not something I'm ever going to do, and I plan on sticking exclusively with donations. So hopefully, if you can support, I really do appreciate it, and I can't even begin to emphasize how appreciative I am of the support that has existed so far, and it continues to grow quite fast right now, and that's incredibly encouraging to see. I never anticipated TDC growing to this level and receiving this kind of support from all of you, so I really do appreciate it, and to know that you feel the project actually is useful and what I'm doing has some kind of utility in drug education or harm reduction is truly great. So I do appreciate all of that. And hopefully TDC will continue to grow and be sustainable into the future. And really that just comes down to your help in allowing me to do this project and grow it into new areas. So if you can help, I really do appreciate that. As always, if you have any questions about the content or about a specific drug or really anything in this area, just send me an email at seth@thedrugclassroom.com. You can also leave a question in the comments if you don't care about it being less private, but email is a fairly good way to reach me, and I do try to respond as fast as possible, although I admittedly don't always get to emails immediately when they arrive. But that is a good way to reach me. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Seth A. Fitzgerald. And you can follow The Drug Classroom at Drug Classroom on Twitter and The Drug Classroom on Facebook. And I think that's it. So I will talk to you all soon.